So the last game we're going to talk about on this episode, or at least as far as the topics go, is Endeavor: Age of Sail.
Yes, it's designed by Carl de Visser. The artist is Josh Cappel. And which version are we talking about? Burnt Island Games?
Grand Gamers Guild.
Grand Gamers Guild. That was the next one. Okay.
Yeah. We played the deluxe version, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, the Kickstarter.
The Kickstarter deluxe version. We played this at Sin City Con, which we'll kind of talk about a little bit later in this episode when we go over a whole Sin City Con topic. But Endeavor: Age of Sail is it's a game about stuff with Europe. I don't even know that whole like history behind it or whatever.
Yeah,
is that what it says for its Wikipedia page?
No, I'm just shaking my head, agreeing with you. It does say Europe in the description. You're correct.
Anyway, each player has a player board, and in the middle of the table, you're gonna have this massive board that's a map of Europe, different parts of Europe that includes like Africa and stuff like that, and it has all these different spots. But we'll get back to that in a minute. Essentially, what you're going to be doing is you play the game over 7 rounds. Each round, you build a building. You're limited to what building you can build from your resources. So you got 4 resources that you have a little track that you move a little thing on. The first one is bricks. The more bricks you have, you're going to break different thresholds to build the next building. So there's 5 different levels of buildings. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 bricks, right? And there are 3 different buildings for each thing. So there's 15 buildings total. And then you have gold, which will allow you to, or sorry, not gold. What's next? You have bricks. You have pottery, I guess. I don't know why it's a pot, but it essentially gives you discs, which are worker guys. You have gold that allows you to take guys off of your actions after you use them throughout the round. And the last thing is how many cards that you can actually have active at the end of a round. Because you can get more than that, but you have to discard down. So anyway, there is a few stages to each round. The first one is build the building. So everybody in turn order builds a building. The turn order will switch each round. Or, it still goes clockwise, but the first player will change each round. Then you're going to, I needed to bring up a picture of this. Hold on. Hold your horses. Endeavor. There was an interesting Kickstarter stretch goal, which gave you a U to put
I like that
on the box of the game to make it Endeavor, which I thought was pretty funny. All right, here we go. So, yeah, the second thing is you get guys. So depending on what your pottery level is at, whatever threshold that you broke, you might get 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 guys. And then the next thing is everybody retrieves their guys off the buildings from the previous round. Obviously, the first round you don't. And then everybody in turn order is going to perform one action until everyone passes, because some people might have more actions than others because the buildings that you build have an action on them. Sometimes they just give you either victory points or they might give you more bricks or resources or whatever. The actions, there's pretty much a sailing action. On the main board, there's spots to put those guys. The main board has all these discs all over these different spaces. So when you go there, you get a resource. You put that token on your board, and you might raise your bricks or your gold or your shields or pottery or whatever. There's certain spaces you can go ship. There are all the spots around Europe have like a shipment track that has to be filled up first before you can explore that region. And then that's where you're going to use that shipment action on. There is I guess it's called takeover or something. It's a flag. It allows you to do the other spots on the board, and you're going to get the discs that are there. There is a cannon. You basically put a guy on your action. You discard another guy, and the third guy replaces a player's disc that's on the board. It's a hostile takeover, basically. And then you have a gold action, which I can't even remember what that does. Takes a card?
No, you take a worker off one of your previously used buildings.
I never used that at all. I don't think I ever had that action. That's interesting. And then there's a crate, and the crate allows you to take one of the cards from a region as long as you have presence there, which means you have a disc somewhere in that region. They have a presence requirement, though, so someone might say like 3 presence, so you have to get 3 discs there through the shipment action or the takeover action in order to get that card. And then at the end of the round, everybody's going to discard down to their hand size, and then you can move on to the next round. And essentially the whole game works like this. You get a building, you do a bunch of actions, you have scored points somehow. Points are mostly from the cards that you take. If the deeper the card is in each deck of the regions, they have actions or they have victory points on them. You also get victory points when you go through the shipment track of each region. Whoever has the most presence in that shipment track when it's filled up will become the governor of that area, and they get a card that has victory points. As you do the little like takeover action or whatever the flag is, and you take over a spot, they are connected to another spot. And so anything you have kind of connecting to each other gives you an extra victory point. And all your resources, the 4 resources that you have, those tracks will give you victory points at the end of the game. Basically for each threshold that you meet. Once you get farther up on the track, it starts giving you a point per every time you move it, rather than a point per every couple of times you move it. And that's mostly the game. Anything else we'll just talk about as we discuss it. I'm going to start with Matt, though, to see did you look anything up about this game or
a little bit, but I felt like it was a little bit too much for me to just watch.
That's fair.
And base what I was. I'll just say I was reading through comments. A lot of people complained about downtime. I don't know if that was an issue.
I wouldn't say downtime was really a big issue because your actions are pretty quick. You're choosing one of your buildings basically to activate, and I mean the actions that you do are, they're done in less than a minute. Less than 30 seconds.
Gotcha. And then the one thing I did see that on the video I watched was the person I watched, I think, acted like it was kind of slow at the beginning, but I think everything kind of escalates quickly at the end and piles on. It sounded like.
No, that's kind of weird.
Which the map, you start in Europe and you have influence there, so you can kind of build out from Europe. But you have no influence anywhere else. You have to set shipping routes or whatnot. So it is a smaller places where you can actually do stuff, and then you kind of expand out during the game.
Gotcha.
Here's what I'll say about that. One, the downtime, I think, is just people who want to be optimal with their ability or with their actions. But I felt like
you have AP issues or something, because you do have a lot of different options to do during your turn, and a lot of different places you can go on the map. So maybe AP prone people might take extra time on their turn, but a usual turn doesn't take very long.
Yeah, and the other thing is, at the beginning of the game, you only have one action. And then next round, when you take a building, you might have a second action. And then so on and so forth. So each round gets progressively bigger and bigger. There are some of those discs on the board when you take over a space can give you like one-time use actions. So maybe each round might have a little bit more going on.
Right.
But, I mean, I feel like downtime-wise, it's weird because I feel like this game should be an hour and a half, even at 5 players. Like, it's a very quick, as long as people are paying attention and really thinking ahead, this game can be knocked out really fast. Although it did take us like 2.5 to 3 hours. It is a lot to set up.
It was our first playthrough as well. So.
Yeah. Even like all 5 of us. So, I don't know. I don't think it's a really long game. And I know it's weird because I don't feel like there was a lot of downtime.
No, I didn't actually even feel like it was 2.5 hours. So
yeah, that's true. I guess that's a good feeling.
Right.
It's just comments I read. I will say that the comments section on this, on the Board Game Geek was really odd looking compared to a lot of other games. I think there was 326 comments.
Wow.
And it literally was pretty much 8 up. 8 had the most. And like your 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 was like 1 comment, 3 comments. It was really weird. It didn't look like normal games. So
a lot of comments on a few different threads.
Yeah, but I assume also if it's on a Kickstarter, it's going to be probably commented by people who really wanted it and liked it. So
I guess just to emphasize one thing though, I believe this is an older game that came out like 10 years ago that they redid.
A lot of people were they understood it was a new one though.
Yeah,
because there was a lot of comparisons. So.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, that's definitely going to be there because I know a lot of people really like the first edition, so they're going to comment on this one. I still like my first edition, or they made a lot of improvements. I like this one better.
Well, I think the biggest thing, and the reason I was bringing that up, is we didn't play with any of the quest modules or whatever they're called.
Yeah, they're called exploits.
Exploits. We pretty much just played base Endeavor.
Oh, gotcha.
Which after kind of learning through it, we were like, all right, they do in the manual say, hey, your first few times don't even use these exploits. Just play the base game, add them later. And we
I recommend that.
Yeah, I do recommend it too, because it is a decent amount to learn the first time you play through it. So adding the exploits is that much more to learn. But even after your first playthrough, you can add the exploits. And
you play with 3 of them, and I think there's 15, and you randomly decide 3 of them.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, there is a lot of extra rules just based off the, in addition to the base game already that you would add on. So,
and I think those would increase the replayability and incorporate new things. Because I believe what they do is they give you different things to do end of game wise, how to score points, different actions.
Right.
Yep. I think my favorite thing about the game is the fact that you do like the escalating rounds.
Yeah.
First round's like, bam, it's done. You're like, this game's going to be 10 minutes.
Yeah.
And then you get another action. You're like, bam, bam, bam. Like it like doubles the length and then triples the length. And not necessarily because, like I said, you don't always get an action with each round. And if you're not doing good on your resources, because you do need to, the 4 resources that you have kind of have to be balanced in some way, because one of them gives you discs to use, but you use all those discs to go on the actions, and some actions actually do 2 or 3 discs. Phone.
It wasn't me.
No,
somebody's phone. Anyway, it doesn't really matter, but so like each round there's like
it was me.
Eric's culprit. It doesn't really matter, but so each round you might get more, like a lot of discs, but you got actions that require you to spend more than what you received.
Right. Well, you got the goad action, or the goad track is you have to pay your workers basically. So you have to pay them to get off your
action
spots,
spaces,
your action spaces, right?
So I really liked it. I mean, it was a big game. I don't necessarily know if I need the deluxe version, but I feel like, from my understanding, there's not that much deluxe to it. The game is just deluxe in general.
I know that the people that missed the Kickstarter, you're not losing anything as far as game. The things that are deluxeified are just the pieces that are in the components. So you're not losing any kind of expansions or different things in the game.
Yeah.
Or the scenarios.
We had some player board issues being warped.
Mm-hmm.
That was the only disappointing thing, but otherwise all the components were great.
Well, I would also say that the game trays were really nice, although I think they were a little bit thin, which they kind of crinkled on the bottom.
Right.
Yeah. But yeah, fine game. I don't know. I feel like we're not going to go out of our way to buy it, but if we come across it at a good price or something, it's definitely a game that's on the radar for that.
Oh, I enjoyed it quite a bit. I did enjoy that everybody was a little bit different. You go up on your tracks differently, and you also get different buildings, which give you different actions. So I'm going to be doing stuff on my turn that's not necessarily the same that you're going to be doing on your turn.
Right. Oh, the last thing I wanted to bring up, I totally didn't write this down, but I thought about it while we were talking. The combat is not annoying. Like I feel like I'm doing my own thing, and maybe it's kind of a first come, first serve. Like I got there first, I took that spot.
Mm-hmm.
I move on and expand out. You don't feel like I mean, I guess somebody could play to the combat thing, but it's really expensive to do combat.
Right.
Because you have to discard a disc. It costs you 3 discs to do it, where every other action is literally 2 or possibly 1.
Right.
It's the most expensive action, so not a lot of people are going to get cannons. And at most, I think everybody, even at the end of the game, the most person had like 2 cannons out of their actions. So
I had 2 cannons. I didn't use them very often because they were expensive.
Yeah. You got to be able to capitalize on what you do or really hinder somebody from that attack.
Mm-hmm.
And it's deceptive too, because like at one point I had like a really nice grid on the board where I was getting all these points, and like most of them, like 4 of them led back to 1 piece. So like, Jason shot it, killed it. I was like, well, that was annoying. I'll just take it back. And he's like, that almost wasn't worth it. Because like I was focusing a lot on the board. I was making a lot of points from the board, but my resources weren't very high. Probably a safer route to go because no one can really steal your resources away from you.
Mm-hmm.
Kind of. whereas on the board they can definitely destroy a link that's really important and lose you like 3 or 4 victory points. So I don't know, I really liked it. The combat was light enough to where you can use it strategically, but it wasn't about, dudes on the map destroying each other.
Right.
So fine game. I'm very glad we played it.
Yeah, me too.
Did it look interesting?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Sweet. Anyway, that's Endeavor Age of Sail.